Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Super excited to see you.
Very well, thank you. How are you guys?
Any news?
Nothing super exciting. Midweek, that's good.
Going to see Amy Shark on Sunday night.
Amy Shark, we don't mind a bit of Amy Shark.
Oh, where are you seeing her? Because she's performing in Bendigo tomorrow night. So where is she for you boys? Beechworth? She's doing a great regional tour, isn't she?
Entertainment Centre.
Yeah. Albury International.
So I missed where you said you were going.
Albury
Clarky?
International. What is this?
Albury. Oh.
Oh, sorry. Albury Entertainment Centre. Albury International. That's
nice.
the airport.
Have you ever heard of or do you recall a band called the Brand New Heavies?
Mm-hmm.
Are they back?
So I have tickets to go into the Brand New Heavies, but I think I'm going to have to go on my own because, well, they're when I first moved to Sydney, it was kind of like my hype track. Anyway, I was laughing with someone the other day. I don't know how I went from listening to Oz Rock in the Gong to, the introduction of acid jazz, which was, the Brand New Heavies. But I suspect I was heavily influenced by the creative director of probably the first advertising agency I ever worked with, because I look back at lots of things and I think, oh, that was his work. That was his work. That was me picking up on something that he had shown me or whatever. But I have tickets to see them on Monday night and they're playing just one of the albums, which was called Brother Sister. And it was from 1994? And I only, like at the back end of last year, found it on CD and I put it on. And it was one of those things that I knew every single word. And before the next track came on, I would know, I could feel that, because you knew the whole album. It wasn't just a song, whatever. And I thought, oh my God, I love this. And I got in touch with a couple of girlfriends of mine who I knew at the time going, you have to get this out. They were still all in Sydney or Wollongong, unfortunately. Otherwise they could come with me. But I think I'm going to have to go on my own. And I think, you know what? Sometimes you just got to suck it up. But I think I'll enjoy it more if I do go on my own, because then I won't be worried about taking someone who doesn't know it and won't really enjoy it. Yeah. So I think I'm going to be a bit of a, loner. But anyway, I'm going to give it a go. That's Monday night next week.
You should ring the creative director of the agency and say, any chance you're in Perth? You want to come and see
I
this
happen to
thing?
know that he's in Japan because I've been watching him on social media. But, yeah, I need to put a flight on and get a couple of girlfriends over from that very early time. First left uni. It was such a big moment in my life. You know what I mean? It was literally moving to Sydney, my dream. And the music's really positive. And I think, gosh, isn't it funny how different music is a soundtrack for different parts of your life?
Absolutely.
And so much of the stuff in the 90s was so grungy or quite dark. And there's a lot of other periods in my life where I got music that sort of speaks to that part of my experience. But, yeah, this is like a hype tape. It's really upbeat and funky and fun. Oh, anyway.
All right. Perhaps we should introduce ourselves. I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarkey. And together we are
Trial by
Wine.
And what are we drinking? Water. Oh, no.
Oh,
I know.
I haven't seen that for a while.
I know. I bought some and I thought I'm going to have one.
The old black and white. Red and white. Oh,
Diet Coke. It's almost a can of Tab.
It is compared to what I've been having. It feels like I've gone back.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's a very deliberate choice because there are a couple of fine bottles of Schweppes soda water that I bought on sale this morning. And when I went to get them, I thought, you know what? I know it's very top shelf, this whole Schweppes thing, because I've been having my Coles and Woolies soda water. But I thought, you know what? Let's bang out at DC.
Wow, you are back.
I know. Trial by sparkling water. Step aside. It's trial by DC today. Yeah. Yep. What about you guys?
Coca-Cola Amatil, if you would like to sponsor us, you can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com.
Would they have any money to sponsor someone like
Probably
us?
Not. No. Clarky.
We're having a Feathertop Riesling Dahl from 2024.
Very nice. Very nice.
Oh, yeah, it's fresh.
It's fresh. It's new. It's summer. Yep.
Yeah. Yep, all of that. How about you?
Oh,
You've got a cola-based drink, haven't you?
I have a cola-based drink, yes. I have a Pepsi Max and Sailor Jerry today on the pirate juice.
Do you need a patch?
What is Sailor Jerry? Is it a rum?
It's a rum. Yeah.
Rum.
It's
I don't know it. Not that I would.
Parrot,
Boss,
peg leg,
80 proof Caribbean rum blended with natural spices.
80 proof.
That's what it says. Crafted in honor
Is that going to fut you up?
It always fucked me up. It's 40% alcohol. Crafted in
Jeepers.
honour of Norman Sailor Jerry Collins, father of the old school tattoo, whatever that means.
Oh,
I'm not a tat person. Anyway, there you go. So I'm honest. It's quite nice. It's a little less dark than, say, Captain Morgan or the Kraken, but it's not bad. Not bad at all. Swanny, got something to tell us?
I do have a little story.
Excellent.
I quite like it. I hope it goes down okay because I chose it because it's Valentine's Day at the end of this week and it kind of seemed to work quite nice. It's a bit of a love story.
We were both young when I first saw you.
Yes, no, that's not the case.
Does it end the same way?
We were
No, I'm
really
sure it doesn't.
old when I first saw you. Right.
But yes, it's a bit of a love story, and I don't know. I sort of found out about it a few days ago, and I've been thinking about it quite a lot. And it's raised probably more questions than it's answered in some. But it's not a terribly frustrating crime or anything like that, nor is it terribly gruesome or anything like that. It's I just found it really interesting, actually, and it raises lots of questions about, I guess, personal interaction and how we deal with people and how we see ourselves and what is love and what is it to different people. But anyway, geography lesson first.
Okay.
This crime is set in the state of Alabama, and it happens in a town called Florence. And Florence, Alabama is described as being literally in the heart of the Bible Belt. It's a small town that sees itself as a small town. I think their population's only around 40,000. And it's where people raise families. It doesn't particularly have anything that it's famous for per se. It's just middle America, little town. I've seen people from Florence interviewed in relation to this crime, and they're so endearing. Like, they're quite funny. And, you know, the accent is thick, and they're these people who are really particular about different things. So, for instance, when they're being interviewed over something that's quite, you know, shocking, and you'd think that they would swear, they won't curse. You know, you see that thing where they have alternative versions for things that keep it, you know, a little bit more sanitized, things like that. But then they also have said, you know, people think that the further south you get, and they're pretty southern, that, you know, we're all rednecks. And like, we're not rednecks. People think that we don't have much going on up here, but in actual fact, we're quite a relaxed people. We're very friendly. We care about each other a lot. We care about the people around us. But to suggest that, you know, we're not playing with the full deck is just not the case. We're good people, and we're just trying to earn an honest living and do, you know, a good day's work and look after our families. So it's sort of quite an ordinary, uneventful kind of place. The crime itself is set in the correctional facility there. And Florence sits within the Lauderdale County. So the Lauderdale County Detention Centre is, I guess, best described as not quite a jail. It's a temporary holding facility. So once you have been given your sentence as such, you would then go on to a larger jail. But it is definitely, in terms of how it works inside, it, you know, operates as what we would call a jail or a prison, whatever else. So it feels like that, but it's the reason why people are there is it's more of a holding facility.
Is it like a slammer?
Is
Like
that when
an
you're on
Alabama
remand?
slammer?
And the Alabama Slammer. What'd you say, sorry, Schmitty?
Do we call that when you're on remand? Like you're pending sentencing or you're pending a trial?
Perhaps. I don't know if we call it that or not, but yeah, that's the kind of thing. And what it does mean is that people can be there for very different types of crimes. And at the Lauderdale County Detention Centre, at the time that this crime occurs, there were people there that might have been there for not paying parking tickets, and also people waiting to go on a capital murder trial. And because it was so heavily overcrowded, because it was too many criminals and not enough place to sort of house them, it was a very intense environment to be in, depending on who you were and who you were matched up with in terms of other cellmates. It could have been a very stressful environment to both live and work in, I suspect. The Lauderdale County Detention Centre is a tough place to work. And the person there that probably had the toughest job was a woman called Vicky White. And Vicky White was the assistant director of operations, and she had been working there. And I don't know if she was in that position the entire time, but she'd been there for 17 years. And she'd certainly been very senior for most of that time. And Vicky was really the person who ran the show. So in all of the interactions with the staff and the inmates, it was Vicky who was pivotal to pretty much both sides of that sort of jail scenario coming together. She was working a very long week, sort of 50 to 60 hours. Her day started at 6:30 in the morning, and she also often worked on weekends, but she was available pretty much 24/7 to her staff if they needed her. So they all looked up to her. She was highly regarded in the correctional world. And what I guess is actually really important was the inmates really, really liked her. They found her to be fair, and she had a very human approach with the inmates. Like, she would not tolerate people who would treat them inhumanely. She's like, if anyone, that suggested that they were anything other than human beings, like, animals or others, she would not tolerate that. She was tough, but she was also very fair, and apparently she was very comforting. So a lot of the inmates that I saw interviewed, they really warmed to her, and they said she was a very nurturing mother-type figure to them, and some of them had never had that in their lives. So what they found was really nice about Vicky was the fact that they would come in and they would be very stressed about what was going to happen in terms of their trial or whatever else, but just being there was terrifying for some of them
100%.
based on who they were with. She would say, you can't worry about this kind of stuff. Let's just sort this out for here and now and get you comfortable and get you into a routine and whatever else. So she was so much like a mother hen. It was quite remarkable. And I think her staff kind of felt the same way in the sense that she wasn't anyone's fool. She wasn't, she wasn't scary. She wasn't intimidating. She just got on with stuff.
Firm,
and the way
but
that
fair.
the way she got the best out of both her staff and the inmates was to be nurturing, as you say, firm but fair. I'm here to do a job. I'm here to help my team do the best they can, and I'm here to get these criminals here processed. It was a job. It had to be done. This is the way it's going to work. This is how it's going to work while you're here. So it was all about giving people the information that they needed. And I think so many things that we see, particularly in movies and whatever else, is like, the inmates, the good guys, and the jailers are the bad guys. Well, I think in real life, quite often, it's probably a real mix. And it's not to say that there wasn't stuff that went on within the Lauderdale County Detention Centre, but she was also the person that was on top of that. She scoured the video footage of what would come in and what would go on within the facility. So, for instance, she would see if someone was bringing drugs in or someone was getting too close to an inmate. She was kind of, she was all seeing all things. You know what I mean? She was
all
in
over
charge.
it.
She was. So that is the role of Vicky, so Vicky White. At any given time, there were about 300 inmates in this facility. So it wasn't like, sometimes in my mind, I think of like a little local lockup, where someone's being held before they go on to the next. It wasn't like that. It was much bigger. And people that were there were sometimes there for years, depending on when their trial came about. So, they weren't all in and out.
It was where they've sat in.
It can be
just forever waiting for
their
their trial to come up. Yeah.
It's a hugely varied experience for lots of people that go in there and how long they're there, what they're doing when they're there, what they're there for. My sources are not that exciting, to be honest, and there's one which I like to wait till the end because it's a brilliant source, but the title will give away the whole game. But the other ones are just sort of local news services, also Wikipedia, but CNN, ABC, and local sort of Florence and Alabama news services. So really there's not much to that. The main meat is in a documentary which is on Netflix, and I really enjoyed it, actually. It's not a massive commitment, but it was so colourful with the people that were involved, and there's so much footage that it's a real ride. And I think, it's actually really enjoyable. Enjoyable is the right word, but intriguing watch. So as I said, we're starting this in August of 2020. And I've just covered the fact that our Assistant Director of Operations at the Lauderdale County Detention Centre, Vicky White, is looking after everybody. She is looking after her staff. She's looking after the inmates. And she's also, by all accounts, an excellent friend and a lovely daughter. She is single. She had been married when she was younger to a childhood sweetheart, but that relationship broke up when her husband started to get involved with drugs, and she just couldn't entertain that. So that marriage broke down, but they did remain friends. She was also engaged some years later to another love of her life. And as she described him, she said, the love of her life was still probably her first husband, and this may have been a rebound. But very sadly, he was killed in a car accident. So they never, not only did they not get married, there was just no relationship there.
Shame.
She lived on her own, and she was very much wed to her job and the people that she looked after. I think that's how she had that sort of how she would show care and whatever else. But I guess the question is, so if Vicky White is taking care of everybody in the Florence jail, who is looking after and taking care of Vicky? So in August of 2020, a new inmate arrives at the Lauderdale Correctional Facility from Donaldson Prison, where he is serving already a 75-year sentence, which included, but was not exclusively, attempted murder.
That's a long sentence for attempted murder. There must be a lot.
I'll get on to what actually happened. But whilst he was at the Donaldson facility, he had confessed to a murder, a murder that was still being investigated.
Goodness.
And that was the murder of a 59-year-old woman called Connie Ridgway. And so the reason he was in Lauderdale was because that was what was happening. He was being processed there whilst they were continuing to investigate the crime that he had said that he had committed. He does then go on to say that, I didn't actually commit that. But that is why he has left one prison and been taken to another facility, and he's being held there whilst the investigation occurs prior to the trial for the confession of this murder of Connie Ridgway.
It's interesting that I don't know if that's normal or not, maybe it is, but they would take someone out of prison to put them into the sort of holding facility while they investigate another crime.
And I don't know why that is, because he's moved from a different county as well, I think. So again, I don't know why that is.
State lines or...
I'm not quite sure.
Right.
But by all accounts, when he arrives, people in that area, they know who he is as well. It's not like it's so far away. And then... I've seen the sheriff of Limestone County, and Limestone County is just west of Lauderdale County. And he said that in 10 years, this particular inmate had been in his facility up to 11 times. So he was a face that everybody knew. He was a bad boy. Like, people knew who he was. So why the 75 years? What had happened? Let me take you back to December 2015 when that occurred.
Surely?
Maybe. A dispatch calls the local sheriff in Limestone County, and he calls him and he says, we've got reports of a home invasion and a shooting. And what it is this particular inmate has gone to his girlfriend's house. He has shot her and he has killed her dog. He then leaves her.
That's 50 years for that at least, yeah.
And he goes next door and threatens the next door neighbour and says, I need your keys, give me your car keys. He then steals that car and then he drives off. At a later stage, he then goes into a lay-by and he decides he's going to switch cars. So he then threatens another couple and says, give me your car, I need it. And they decide not to give him the car and they attempt to drive off. At which point he shoots through the back of that vehicle.
God.
And he gets the female in the shoulder but doesn't kill her.
Luckily.
He then continues on his journey in, I think, the original car, and he arrives at a service station where he hits up another driver and says, I need your car, get out.
On a spree of carjacking.
The other guy gets out. Then the guy starts yelling out, I need my phone, I need my phone. So apparently he reverses up, hands the guy his phone,
takes off.
Then drives off
He's
in this
not
other
a
vehicle.
complete monster.
No. He then hits the interstate where a chase ensues, and it's actually the inmate who wrecks the car himself. He goes up, on an embankment, and then he stops. And the next thing that you see is actually the footage from the police officer, the body cam. That's right. It's from the officer, the body cam, as he gets out and he starts to interact with this guy. So to start with, he starts yelling at him, and the guy is standing with two guns, one either side of his head. And so this guy's going, put the gun down. I can't even do the accent down. Put the gun down. And he's yelling back, I want the sheriff. I want the sheriff. I want sheriff.
I want the sheriff.
Yeah.
Ain't talking to no deputy.
That's right. So eventually the sheriff does arrive. And when the sheriff arrives, he yells out to the guy who's standing up behind the car.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch. No?
He yells out, Casey, put them dang guns down. And then he yells out in
Just
return,
arrived. Yep.
Mike, call Mom, tell her I love her.
Is Mike his brother or
No,
No,
relation?
Mike's the sheriff. He knows the sheriff that well.
Oh my
so he's
God.
waited for the sheriff, who he's obviously got a relationship. He knows him that well because he's seen him that many times. And also the sheriff knows him so well that he's saying, Casey, put down those bloody guns. And then Casey's saying, oh, Mike, call him. And then the sheriff goes on to say, no one's going to die here tonight, Casey. Put your guns down. So they then have a little bit of a negotiation, and Casey agrees to put the guns down if they get him a sun drop.
What's a sun drop?
What is a sun drop? Why?
Like
A sun
something.
drop is a citrus soda native to North Alabama, which is where they're from. And I looked it up, and it's like, it does have a very high caffeine content.
Oh.
It does have juice concentrate in it, and it's
Ooh.
a greeny yellow color. So I guess it's really like a Mountain Dew or something. I don't know, but
Yeah.
Sounds awful.
I've never heard of it, but
It was
it's made
sounding
by
nice
the
for a
Dr.
while.
Pepper group. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, it's called a sun drop. And that's how this gentleman was given a 70-year sentence for that mess. I've seen it quoted as 70 and 75, so I don't know if he ended up doing something else at some point, which ended up another 5 years on it. But anyway, 70 to 75 years is what he was in prison for, and it was that particular night and all that came with it: the attempted murder of the girlfriend, the dog, the stealing of the vehicles, the shooting
Oh,
of the
so the
woman.
girlfriend didn't die.
She didn't die.
Oh, right.
So, Schmitty, you were right.
Attempted
50
murder.
years for the dog.
Yeah.
And then 12 and a half for 2 attempted murders.
yeah.
Exactly.
enough.
So,
That sounds
may
about
I
right.
introduce you to Casey White.
Okay.
Now,
Casey,
Vicky
ain't
White,
nobody gonna die tonight.
Vicky White, who I talked to you about before, who's running the prison, and Casey White
Not related?
are not related in any way. No.
Oh,
No relation.
I thought they must have got married in prison or something.
No, Casey Cole
Oh.
White is no relation to Vicky White. No, Casey, put them dang guns down.
You can't get back. Casey.
Mark, call Mama, tell her I love her. I love it. And of course you see it all because it's all filmed, right?
yeah.
So it is actually as corny as it sounds. You know, these pair know each other. Like, no one's going to die here tonight, Casey. Put those guns down. You know what I mean? Come on. I don't need to call your mama. What do you want? Oh, it's brilliant.
Sandra. What's Sandra?
It's Sandra.
Yeah,
Sandra.
Sandra.
Yep, Sandra.
Casey,
So-
they're getting really hard to get. Is there some other alternative drink that you could have?
I'm sure it must have been really easy to do that on the servo.
I'll have a Dr. Pepper if you can only do that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm probably absolutely
I'm
butchering
totally
the
on the accents, yeah.
accents, but it's so much fun.
That's what it sounds like to us. Yeah.
Absolutely. So now I need to take us back to 2020. So we're back in Florence, Lauderdale County Correctional Facility, and Casey White has just arrived. So he should have been put into an isolated area as soon as he arrived, given the fact that he was on such serious charges and he was considered a dangerous man. But overcrowding issues meant that he couldn't be isolated. So what they did was they put him into the A1 cell, which was the one that was considered most visible, and it had the most sort of, well, yes and no, it had the most serious offenders in it, because some of the other people that were in there weren't serious, but not on quite of the same caliber. Now, when he went in there, this cell could accommodate 8 men. At times, it had 16 men in
I was
there.
going to say how many in there? 20?
At times. So I don't know
Jesus.
at exactly that moment, but it did have a lot. So it's definitely overcrowded. And I've seen 2 men who were interviewed who were in there at the same time. One was this very quietly spoken Hispanic man, and the reason he was there was for domestic violence. And what had happened with him was he said, I am an alcoholic. I'd been drinking and I'd had an argument with my father, and then I'd gone out and slashed the tires of my dad's car. And when I went to trial, I got a year for that. There might have been something else that I'm not sure, but it got you.
It's often talked about in a particularly true crime podcast based in the US that people are in jail for very minor things.
Yeah,
they're
depending
given-
on the colour of their skin and stuff too.
Well, there's
probably.
that too, but also just they'll pick up someone for being in possession of a joint and they'll give them 6 months. The overcrowding is extraordinary, and there's a lot of privatisation of detention centres and prisons as well, and they were trying to make money out of it too. So it's a bit of a melting pot for bad
Yeah,
situations.
That's exactly right. So you've got someone who I think that seems relatively low key. Then another gentleman who was interviewed.
Who'd stabbed someone 65
and I just,
times.
no,
Yeah.
not at all. I just had to include him because of the way he pronounced this one particular word. So he comes across as quite polished. And he says, well, you know, when Casey arrived, I thought we were going to have trouble here, but in the end, we had kind of similar backgrounds. And the reason why he thought they had something in common was because he had gone in for domestic violence, but it must have been quite serious, I think, judging it. But he had been part of the police.
The
He was
police.
the
love
police.
that, the
And at one point, he actually described it that he was a police. A police. So
Not
he was
the
saying
police.
that as a general rule, he kind of copped a fair bit of grief in jail because he was considered to be part of them.
police, yeah.
And what he'd done was he wasn't like a police officer
Informant
per se.
or-
He
Community services officer?
he was part of a riot squad, so he turned out like really front line kind of nearly
Yeah.
soldiery type kind
Militia
of thing,
almost.
but was considered as part of like the correctional police body as opposed to it. So his role as part of the police put him, you know, in a situation where he knew a lot more than other people and he was more observant. So he talked himself up quite a lot because he'd been part of the police. And he and Casey ended up having quite a okay relationship because once Casey realised that he was also a domestic violence, so they had some commonality there.
Well, that's nice. Nice to find your common ground.
That's all happening in the A1 cell. So what do we know? How can I describe Casey White to you? There's something really important off the bat. He's a big man. Casey is 6'9". He's a biggin'. Yeah, he's
is
6'9" and covered in tats. Some white supremacist tats, but apparently Casey's very charming. So what Casey would do is he would speak very politely. And what I do love about this is when they speak to the women, quite often they will call them like, you know, Miss Louise, Miss Caroline, Miss, that real Southern charm.
Yeah.
So when they are speaking to people, they can come across as quite respectful and certainly at times quite charming. That's not to say that other prisoners are not doing the same thing. They absolutely are. And the thing about Casey was he was just such an incredible presence. 6'9".
Yeah.
Covered in tats. You know, this guy, he takes up space.
Giant. Yeah. He was 6'9" and covered in tattoos.
And I do sound like
But
Donald.
that was just between the eyes.
I'm getting all my accents mixed up.
What's the one in Steel Magnolias? I ain't mad, Luann. I just been angry for 40 years or something like that.
Yeah.
That's what it's reminding me of too.
Olympia Dukakis, yeah.
Olympia Dukakis. I don't know why I think that name's
Shirley
fabulous.
MacLaine.
Shirley MacLaine. But
Oh, was it
Olympia
Shirley
Dukakis
MacLaine?
as a name.
Olympia Dukakis is in it, yeah.
Dukakis. It's such a great
exactly.
name.
She's the rich lady.
Yeah. I ain't crazy, Milena. I just been angry for 40 years.
So by all accounts, not only was he very charming, he was actually quite chatty. So I've seen
Chatty Casey.
male men within the system as well who said that he would be very charming to them, very polite. And he said one of them was saying, you know, that he'd smoked. And he said, you know, he was fabulous to me all day, like just so charming, so complimentary, not too complimentary that I would get suspicious or whatever else. He said, but the moment I didn't offer him a cigarette when he wanted one, he said that was it. He just cut me off. So again, he said, you know, and all of them are aware of it, both the people who are inmates and also the staff, that it is a bit of a charm offensive. People do things to get things, right? They're trying to curry favour. They want to have privileges and benefits that come with it.
come on, what
Of
else
course.
can you do?
Exactly. So it was pretty obvious. And we'd had Casey, like at one point there was a woman quoted and he went up to her, he was like, Miss Renee, it's been 5 long years since I touched a woman. Can I get a hug? And she's like, hell no, get away from me. And she's like, you know, you've got to be a really strong woman to work in
I bet you
the
do,
prison
though.
system.
That is true.
And it's so true. They know how to play it. And what she was talking about, and I don't doubt this for a moment, she said inmates are so clever. They're so savvy. They watch you. They see how you're coming to work from one day to the next. They have nothing else
I was just
to
gonna
do,
say,
per
they have
se.
literally
So
nothing else to do.
they watch you like your
It
own
was
spouse
creepy.
wouldn't necessarily watch you going, oh, someone's got a bad day. Someone's had an argument with their husband. Someone's not on, someone's got their
how
period, whatever it
creepy.
is, they know. And what they do is they play into that. So it's like, oh, have you done something to your hair? Don't you look nice today? It means, what's going on?
Aren't you
You're sad.
looking gorgeous today, Miss Luann? Yeah.
Absolutely.
You've been down the beauty shop.
Exactly. So she was saying you got to know you cannot be their friend, but you do not want to be their enemy. It is such a fine line that you are walking all the time to make that place function and work as best it can, whilst all of this, game playing and potential manipulation is happening all day, every day. And she said that was what was so good about Vicky was very clear with people what she expected from them, how to manage these situations, how to be kind and fair without having to succumb to every flirtation or compliment that was paid. And she's, it is very interesting. And I think you could do a whole other piece on what it must be like to be a woman who works in an all-male jail, because you would have to be besides the fact you'd have to be pretty ballsy, I think. That'd be,
You'll be on your guard at all times.
You've got to be on your guard all the time, and then just to be not taken advantage of. So where am I headed with all this? Where am I headed with Casey White and Vicky White? Well, I think you probably could have a guess at where we're headed. These pair fall in love. Now, how on earth does this happen in a jail under everybody's eyes when
Swanny,
she's running the show?
Swanny,
I do wonder.
We've experienced this before. Sometimes it's just chemical.
Yes, well,
You just can't help it. You see someone and your pheromones go nutty and you lose your mind over them. And then a few years later you look back and you think, what was I even imagining? Like, honestly, what? That person is so gross. Why was it? And it's just chemical.
And you know what? I honestly think that's why I can really relate to this crime in a way. Because I've been sitting with it for a couple of days. We've all had an absolute shocker,
A crush.
or
when
more at different times when you get so caught up in something. Now, what's interesting here is we've got a 56-year-old woman, and I think that's quite an important point, and maybe only other women of a certain age will understand what that really means. But you've got a 56-year-old woman who has worked and become so highly respected in what she does that it became sort of her whole identity in some ways.
Yeah.
But, and quite happily so. As I said, highly respected.
Until you're getting attention from someone.
And it's not that she wouldn't have got it from other people before. Something happens where it's like, why this one? Why this one did it happen with this person?
Yeah.
And that's what I find quite interesting. So it's sort of how it was sort of revealed and how I became aware of it was that the gentleman who had been with the police was sharing the cell with Casey.
Oh, right, okay.
And he says when he first started to notice things, he said they as a cell started to get sort of better treatment.
Oh.
But overall, the way they were being treated there was a slight shift. So that when Vicky would come to deliver their mail, and then she would take their mail out, there was just little extra things, time being taken, a certain amount of care. And then Casey started buying more at the commissary. So at one point he was buying love cards, but when he was writing on them, he was saying that he was sending them to his mum, which is, I guess, believable, maybe. But he also needed help with spelling.
Well, we do know that he does love his mother.
We do know that he does love his mum. There's no doubt about
Call
that.
my mum and tell
Mum! Call Mum! Tell her I love her.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he starts writing on the cards, and then Mr. Police says he'd asked me for words. He said, but it was believable at one point. He said because
Until
he was
the words were penetration.
Yeah, but he was writing to his investigator as well. So whilst, remember, he's in there for the potential murder, he was dealing with, I guess, a lawyer or something in that respect. So what he said was he would always have an envelope above his cell, which was the letter that he was sending next to the person who was investigating. So there was different women that he was communicating with, his mother and I guess a lawyer. So he said it was somewhat believable. He said, but then it got to a point where he was asking me how to spell the word gorgeous. And he said, and I was thinking, I'm not sure that you'd be using the word gorgeous for something like that. But, there were things like that. And then people started to notice that when he would write the card to his mum, he would address it to mother or mum, but there wouldn't be a stamp affixed. There would be no things. And what was happening
It was a code.
And then,
They were for her.
It was sent to her. It was for her. So that's how they begin the sort of relationship as such. And apparently it had started, or that's what people say, because he had said to her the simple comment of, "You got a nice ass." Now, could you imagine how many times she would have been told that? She must have been told that constantly. What did Vicky White look like? She looked like a 56-year-old woman. I don't know if she was short. She certainly looked short next to him. She was probably average height, average build. She did have very blonde hair. She had sort of a bleached blonde hair, and she looked quite nice. As was described, she always had her nails bright red. You know, she would have her hair done. She always smiled at everybody. And on Fridays, when it was casual Friday, she always wore her denim jeans and a white shirt, and her nails looked nice, and she wore, you know, her boots and whatever else. She was just nice to be there. There was nothing over the top about what she looked like. She just looked like a nice, well put together, ordinary woman. But
you had me at you had a nice ass.
yes, that's kind of how it played out, I think. So what became more obvious to certainly the inmates was that there were times when they would be taken out and he would be left, "Oh, we need to do something with Casey." So when it all sort of blew up, there were times that people could remember, actually, we were left there, but we were taken out, but he was told he had to see you, had a meeting or something, but actual fact, I think it was not often. I don't think this was happening all the time, but when it could happen, Vicky was making sure that it would be something that she could be alone with him. How do we know how this relationship really did transpire and what it was like in that relationship? Well, the reason we know that is because all of the phone calls that the pair of them had are, of course, documented, recorded.
But she must have known that.
She knows that. But what she did was she got a second phone. So she had her work phone, the phone that they recognised the number, and she obviously just took a risk on the fact that they wouldn't find it. But the whole relationship is detailed. Every phone call. And it is...
explicit?
It is. It's everything. It's ordinary and it's normal and it's kind and it's explicit and it's a little bit of everything because it went on for a couple of years. And she's no one's fool. Like, you'll hear her sit down after work and she'll sit down, she'll take the call, or I presume she calls him. More often than not, it's them. You know how it's that privatisation thing where you know that the company name is the prison, who the prison's run by and stuff. It says it's going to be recorded, tells her how much time they've got, how much time they've got left. See, it's all very obvious it's being recorded. Like, there's no big mystery there. But most of the conversations are, you know, there'll be days where she's like, you know, where she says she's tired or, you know, she's stressed. Then there are other conversations where it's very lovey-dovey and, you know, he'll be telling her that he's got nothing to do but just think about her. And a lot of it was going on during COVID. So he's, at one point, they're talking about the fact that they were given tablets, like, for the correctional facility because they could have no visitors or whatever else. And she's saying to him, you know, have you found anything you can do on or whatever else? Like, she's kind of talking to him a little bit like a mother again. And he's like, oh, you know, I guess so. I've got all the time in the world. Sometimes I just like to sit here and think about you and what we could do. And, you know, they start this kind of dream.
Fantasy of when he's out. Yeah.
And when he's out, she refers to herself as the good girl. You finally found a good girl. And he talks about the fact that, you know, this started by him saying, you had a nice ass. And she's like, oh, I don't know. You know, I just think I found this. You're a real, because when he speaks to her and like you can hear all the conversation, he sounds like a really quite simple country boy. And that's what she calls him, the country boy. And then she sort of says, oh, you know, oh Lord, how did I get myself here? And he says, you know, you don't expect to fall in love, you know, and it's all that kind of stuff.
Can I ask in this?
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying with this second phone, if they don't identify her name or something, yes, it's all recorded, but was the idea that they wouldn't work out it was her?
Not even. No. Not
even that complicated.
Not even.
Okay.
If she'd got caught, she would have been caught. There's no doubt who she is and what they're talking about.
Right.
It is out there. It's good. It's unbelievable how. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if they're monitored by her, I think, in some instances. Because there was lots of other times where they were talking about her monitoring computers and what came in and what went out and whatever else. So perhaps she's in charge of that as well. So perhaps she can keep people away from that. Yeah. But you know, then there are other things that are quite funny. At one point, he was saying to her, what would she have been if she could have been anything? And then she goes on to say she would have been a stripper. And he's like, what? And she was like, you know, I really would have liked to have been a stripper. I would have liked to have been attractive enough to be a stripper and make thousands of dollars. And he's like, I don't think you'd be very I think you're better than that. I think you're smoking hot, but I don't think, you're better than that. Like he doesn't go, oh, whatever. He just sort of says, no. So I'm totally baffled as to whether or not he was really in love with her or not, having heard the calls. I actually am none the wiser. I couldn't say if he was that good at being manipulative or that he really was in love. Yeah, I just don't know. It does mean that, he had extra phone calls, he had extra favours, he had extra stuff at the commiss. Like, there was all these favours that were heading his way. And a lot of it comes down to, like, when you start to look at the footage, was how he was dealt with in the prison was not the way you deal with a person who is that dangerous. The corners were being cut with him that shouldn't have been. And she was very comfortable.
Clearly.
Yeah. But it wasn't all, and I think this is what I kind of want to stress. It wasn't all just phone sex. There was a bit of that, and there was a little bit of Casey orgasm from time to time when I could tell that she was enjoying herself. But you know what? It wasn't necessarily the lion's share of it. That was just part of it, and that's what I think is important to say in trying to work out whether this was legitimate or not. I don't know.
It was a relationship, but it was conducted on the phone and sort of weirdly, surreptitiously within the confines of the prison.
And lots of what I would call just sort of normal couple end-of-day phone calls. How was your day? And,
just
I'm tired.
sharing information.
Yeah, this is what I'm doing. Yeah. So that's the sort of ones that I've been sort of exposed to. But where is this headed? Well, it's headed to a jailbreak.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
Ooh.
I know, but that jailbreak coincides with, rather ironically,
Valentine's Day.
No. It coincides with
Mother's Day.
Deirdre Chambers, what a coincidence, Vicky White's last day at work. She's retiring.
Oh, right.
No. Oh, that's nice. I thought you were going to say laundry day or something.
No. So Vicky is retiring. So on the morning of April 29, 2022, so not quite 2 years since Casey White has arrived at the Lauderdale Convention Centre now, correctional facility. Everybody is in a breakout room enjoying cake and celebrating Vicky. It's her last day. And Vicky is, by all accounts, a little bit quiet, and people are a little bit sort of concerned and think, she's probably not ready to leave. This is her whole life. Is she doing the right thing? Everyone's saying, what are we going to do without you? And most of her staff are absolutely freaking out, thinking,
how are we going to run this place?
I don't know if I can do this without Vicky. We've still got so much to learn from you, Vicky, yada, yada, yada. She goes up to one of her colleagues, and I think it's the woman who runs the medical facility. Like, I suspect they're also very good friends. And she says, I've got something for you. Open your hand. And the other woman opens her hand, and Vicky hands her over her brass. So by all accounts, I assume your brass is your police number or your correctional facility number. So it's your
identifier.
That's the word I'm after. Yeah, yeah. And she's like, no, you can't do this to me. I've got so much to learn from you still, whatever. She's like, no, I'm done. And she said she wasn't happy. She wasn't anything. She was just a bit quiet. And everyone was sort of saying she just wasn't really, giving a lot away. But they thought that was because she was not so great at saying goodbye. Yeah, big change. Yeah. Exactly. And there was a big change coming. And the big change comes half an hour later when a cuffed and shackled, as requested by Vicky, Casey White is being held at, like, there's sort of like a section just before you would leave the prison when you're about to be taken out somewhere, where she meets him to take him to a supposed mental health check at the courthouse. So what Vicky has managed to do is sort of have everybody where they need to be and busy and doing what they're going to do. And she's sort of just as a matter of fact saying, well, I've got to get Casey down to the courthouse. I'm free this
afternoon. I'll take him.
Oh, Deirdre Chambers, what a coincidence.
Yeah.
And I think there's a whole host of rules that are broken at that point. I think it had to be more than one person with her. They're all, it's just a myriad of things. The least interesting part about this crime is all the stuff that's pretty obvious. It's a
jailbreak. Of course, she's not going to follow all the rules. Yeah.
And of course, every single part of this crime really is all filmed. So you see her leave with him.
Yeah.
So initially what happens is off they go, and then we're now back at the detention centre, and a little bit of time goes by, and then apparently she sort of said that she was also going to a doctor's appointment, but it was the last day, so I don't know what people were really expecting. So there was enough sort of subterfuge to start with that no one really kind of realised that they had a problem until they were like,
bought them some time. Yeah.
Yeah, where's Vicky, and has she brought Casey back yet? He's not in his cell. And they interview her, one of the officers, and he's like, when an inmate's out, their name is at an angle. Is that the word I'm trying to say? Not,
an in-out indicator.
In-out, yeah. And he said he kept going past and, oh, God, that's been like that, but that can't be right. Surely he's back by now.
Someone forgot to turn it.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, that's how they realise that there's actually something going on. Initially, everyone's like, oh, my God, he has taken her and she is at huge risk.
That is what you'd assume, isn't it?
Assume, yeah. He's incredibly dangerous man. He's going to do great harm to her.
Everyone's been lulled into a false sense of security, and he's taken it,
An investigation starts immediately, obviously, but everybody at this initial point is thinking, what has Casey done to her? He has taken her and he's going to hurt her. And it's pretty quick they start to realise, hang on, why did she do that? So they start calling all of her friends who are her colleagues, and everyone comes in and they all start to go back to footage and whatever else. And it's at that point they start
thinking, hang on a minute.
That's not right. Or why would she have made that choice? And first of all, a bolo goes out, and a bolo, not to be confused with a bogo, is a be on the lookout. But I thought for my marketing friends, a bogo, buy one, get one free.
Bog off, yep.
Bog off, the bog off deal. Bog off is now a bolo. So there's everyone's like, there's a lookout, and they are really thinking we've got this highly dangerous criminal on the loose, and he's got one of ours. So let's get this sorted. Back at the facility, they find that the footage shows that when she leaves with him, just the two of them, and she walks out and she casually opens the door, the first door. She kind of holds it ajar slightly. He's the one who actually pushes the door open, then follows her out. She takes him to the car. He's still behind her, and they get into the car. He gets in the back, she gets in the front, and off they go. Apparently you never walk in front of a criminal, let alone a criminal of that caliber.
No.
And there's also other protocols around the door usage or whatever. She just walked out casually. They're not talking. They're not doing anything. She just walks out. They know exactly what they're doing. So they start to do a bit of investigation, and they arrive at Vicky's parents' house. When they get there, they're all armed. They're trying to look to see if Vicky's here. And her mum comes out, and they say, do you know where Vicky is? She's gone missing and she's with a dangerous criminal, and her parents have no idea. And they say, oh, she actually lives here with us. And they were like, okay. And they were like, oh, okay, why is that? And they were like, oh, well, she sold her house some months ago. Apparently, her house is worth $250,000, and she sold it for $95,000 in a hurry.
She's trying to get out of Dodge.
Oh, no.
Absolutely. Whilst they're investigating and looking through her bedroom, they find out that her purse is there with her credit cards and her license, everything sat on the bed. And the investigators are able to look at her checking account, and they can see that she had quite a lot of money in there, but a whole heap had been recently withdrawn.
Mm-hmm.
Shock horror. Then they find a statement for what turns out, of course, to have been her burner phone that they were not aware of.
Wow.
So the moment they find out that number and they cross-reference it with his number in the prison, what do you know? Between November 2020...
Lights up like a Christmas tree.
Yep. So remember, he'd arrived in August 2020. So from November 2020 through to February 2022, they had over 1,000 phone calls between Vicky and Casey.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
In one part of the recordings, you hear him say something to her about the phone, and she basically says, don't be stupid. That's a work phone. I would never call you on that or whatever else. This phone is only for you. It's like he'd forgotten. She was always very aware of what was going on. She's like, don't kid yourself. And that's literally what she's like, don't kid yourself. This is only for you. I would never, ever communicate with you on that phone.
I'm not that stupid.
Yeah, I'm stupid. I'm not stupid. I'm in love. So what then obviously starts to tremor. They're like, oh my God, she's got him out of here. And then they really it dawns on them that Vicky has worked in law enforcement for about 20 years. So she's going to know how law enforcement works and how investigators will start a manhunt. Again, going back to the recordings, here are some of the things that she had told him that, again, on the record. One of the things she told him, you can't Google anything. It'll lead it. It's a trap. I can't do that. So I won't Google anything. All of our phone calls are recorded. Every call from a prison is recorded. So don't be so naive that that this isn't all recorded. Everything is.
Mm.
But she had to know that while she could keep one of it separate and she could oversee it, I think that was still part of her role.
It must be, because otherwise it's so risky, the whole thing.
Risky. Yeah. She told him we can't use cell phones because obviously they ping off towers. Vehicles have GPS in them. She knew what she was dealing with, and she knew how they would chase fugitives. What they had to look for were her habits, because they knew it couldn't be anything terribly recent. So they were trying to find what had she done over the last year that was perhaps different or significant in terms of
like a purchase of another vehicle or I don't know. Yeah, something like that. Something
Really
where she's setting
just
up
like
something
that.
else, yeah.
What they found was what she liked to do was she'd go to Walmart or Target, and when she was buying her groceries, she'd have her standard grocery shop, and then there'd be one camping item in each shop.
Oh, brilliant.
Just one little thing. Every time she'd go, just one little thing. Might have been a sleeping bag, might have been some, cooking gear for camping.
Why didn't she
She
just
also-
withdraw cash and buy these things with
It's
cash?
funny, isn't it?
I think she must have just thought it's, to spread it out and do it like that, it's less likely to be picked up. But
Yeah, maybe.
at the time that
there must have been receipts of something, yeah.
But, like
wouldn't you still be a receipt?
Yeah, but yes, for cash, but it would be much harder to link it to her. Like you take out 10 grand, you go to Anaconda and buy a sleeping bag. They'll know that someone paid cash for that sleeping bag. But unless they find you on CCTV or something, how do you know
They
it
did
was
have
you?
her on CCTV. They definitely had her on CCTV. But you are right. I think she must have used cards at some point. You're quite right.
You would have driven somewhere on your weekend and gone way, way away and then bought something with cash and then gone somewhere
And I think
else
she was doing it as
like,
part of her local shop. Yeah,
exactly.
I think you're right there. That's why they were able to look at it. And when she went shopping, because of the nature of her job,
smart,
I bet she shot at the same time. Yeah, but not foolproof.
Yeah.
She also bought numerous firearms, and there's conversations with him, and they're talking about where she should get that. And she's talking about
the man who shot his ex-girlfriend. I wouldn't be,
Bonnie and Clyde.
wouldn't be giving him a.
So she's talking about what type of gun she's getting, what she could get at different point. And he was like, get this gun, go to Dick's, like Dick's shootings. Like there's Dick's Sportswear or something.
Dick's shootings?
What's it called? No, what's it called? There's a really...
Is that what you said? You like Dick shootings?
I did.
Oh, that escalated.
Oh, I did. I need to correct myself on that. What I'm thinking of is I know because it's come up many, many times. There's some Dick's Sporting Good or something like that. There's some famous chain in the US.
Dick's shooting. Oh, God.
Why are people...
I always get those things mixed up.
Gun ownership. I think it's called Dick's Sporting Goods, but it's really very big in the US. That's why I think I was calling it. I knew it was called Dick's, like Dick's shooting.
It's a
Dick's
big
Sporting Good.
Dick in the US.
Big Dicks, yeah. So I think everyone goes there. So, and he was saying, by this particular type, it's less expensive than a Glock. So they had different types of guns, but she'd purchased those. And she'd also been purchasing men's clothing.
Because she was transing?
So she's been planning this for a very long time.
Yes, absolutely. When they realised, the investigators...
pay cash and go to the nearest Salvos and get his clothes from them.
Yeah.
She just needs a cabin in the woods that they can go and hide out in.
Well, that's what they talked about a lot. And he would always talk about, let's go to the backwoods in Tennessee. I just want to be in a log cabin. I don't want anyone to see us. Let's go there for years. Let's just run away and hide away. They just want to be on their own. So when obviously, because the FBI, the US Marshals, everybody's involved, when it becomes very clear that she's involved, there's an arrest warrant issued for her as well. So the 29th of April is when they've shot off, and the arrest warrants were made too. So it took a couple of days for them to sort of get a real handle on what was happening. But that was when the manhunt switched from statewide to nationwide as well. And apparently it had quite a lot of, which you can imagine, coverage in the media across the US. So she'd left the patrol car, and it was seen like 8 minutes after she'd left, like you can see it on a service station. So then they were trying to find out where to next. Her personal vehicle had been left in Rogersville, I think it was, about 35 miles from town. She'd gone to a shopping centre, and what was quite funny was the investigator was saying, there's words that I love to hear, and when I said to the man, does your camera work? He said, yes, my camera works. He goes, I can't tell you how good that sounds because it so often is not the case. Yeah. And they trawled through all this footage, and what they found was Vicky in the parking lot, and they see her walk past at one point, and she's, again, really clever. She's got the car parked so far away in the back corner, so she thinks that no one will pick up on it. Yeah. But then she parks it next to another car so that she kind of hides going, so the car's somewhat obscured. And actually, if the car had been even one more over, that this camera would have missed it entirely. But they're able to identify this car as a red or orange Ford Edge small SUV. Anyway, she's basically gone and purchased that car, and she's had it there waiting so that when they get there that she can take it. So then they know what they're looking for. So they're looking for this Ford Edge, which was the second getaway car, I think. Anyway, it ends up being found in Tennessee. So Tennessee is the next state above Alabama. And everyone's sort of thinking, as time goes by, how much further have they gone? Like, people are trying to work out if they traveled so many miles a day, they're looking much further afield potentially than where they actually were.
Stay at home.
So
leave your car somewhere, or
the
leave
Ford
cars,
Edge is the orange Ford Edge. They find the guy she'd bought it off. They find that it's being dumped, and at one point you can tell they've tried to start painting it, which looks terrible. And it's so funny because all the people who are her friends and people who work with her are all going, "Oh, she would never have done that. That's ridiculous. That's like such poor work. She would never have even tried something like that. That's him. That's him. That's him. How ridiculous and how desperate." She's obviously gone, "No, Casey, it's not working. We need to move." That couple had switched to a blue 2006 Ford F100 pickup truck, and they continued to head north, and they just check in and out of, several motels along the way. She's picked up on surveillance video. She's wearing a dark wig. But the thing is, he would be unmissable. How many people would you see as a woman this high and a 6'9" man when there's images of them where they've really got to keep low?
A 5'10" bloke.
Yeah.
You know how they have the lines to indicate your height near the doors of servos and stuff? He'd be off the charts with that.
He would be unmissable, wouldn't he? Yeah, it would be unmissable. I did think, I was like, oh my God, you got your work cut out for you there, love, trying to conceal him. They eventually arrived in Evansville, Indiana, and again, we're another state up. So not huge distances, not considering what they could have done.
Should have gone to Mexico.
I'm surprised they didn't. I think that their idea of hiding in a backwater, I don't know, maybe it was a bit short-sighted. When they get to Evansville, they rent a motel room. And what they did was they found a homeless man who was actually a convicted sex offender, and they give him $100 to reserve the room for them in his name, and they pay for a 14-day stay, and then they go into the room. So the man was obviously unaware what they were doing, but that's how they got the hotel room. They didn't walk in because, it'd be so obvious if anyone was aware of who they were. Even if if you saw any glimpse of him,
you'd be like, there's that giant that they're looking for. Yeah.
So the authorities offered rewards for information leading to their capture, and you see the press conferences that they're giving back in Lauderdale County, and they're becoming increasingly desperate and worried, not only for the fact that, she's at risk. They're no longer saying that that's a concern to them. They need her to do the right thing because she's the one who was the good girl. She's the one who's let him out. And what they were able to say is that when they found the car that's in a sheriff's department or on the side of it, the key was in the back. They knew that she had unlocked his shackles, and his prison-issue shoes were left in there. It was totally set up, ready to go. She had the key the whole time. On May 9, 2022, authorities in Evansville, Indiana, received a surveillance video of the couple washing the pickup truck from a car wash employee.
Is this like 10 days after
It's 11 days that they're
11 days.
Yeah, it's quite a long time given that they didn't go that far. They were later spotted in another video getting into a grey Cadillac DTS. And Evansville police officers saw the vehicle at a motel, 41, and called for additional units. Now, what happens next? We don't know why it happened, but they decide to leave the motel. Mm-hmm. And that's when things get a little bit cray-cray.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit hectic here. So the couple leave the motel. They head to the Cadillac, and Casey White is driving.
Is this Cuban Hill music? Or?
Kind of, yeah, it is a bit.
Yeah, okay.
And straight up, a chase ensues because everyone was sitting there waiting. They were monitoring the room. So the chase goes across US 41, and it doesn't seem to last that long. And again, it's all filmed because it's from all the dash footage and whatever else, and you can hear everyone chase them, all the different police officers talking to each other. So whilst this chase is happening, and they don't know if she did this intentionally or not, but Vicky calls 999.
911.
Oh.
I knew I was saying that wrong.
999 ours is 000.
What's that? 000 9. Yeah. I've written it down. And I was like 999. That doesn't sound right. 911.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Vicky calls 911, and of course, it's then recorded. So again, another bit of evidence in all of this. There were so many different things that you were there saying, and the operator is saying,
Must have been on purpose, or did she hit the emergency thing on your phone?
Well, they don't
Changed
know what
her
they
mind.
think. I don't know. Anyway, she's got.
Oh, this used to be
She's
fun.
not saying I need help. She's talking to Casey. That's why they think there's a little bit of confusion.
Oh.
It's not a direct conversation she's having them. It was basically someone saying, "Can I help you? Like, what do you need? What else?" And she's having a conversation, with Casey or telling Casey to be careful or whatever else.
Right.
It's not what you. It's not her
It wasn't
saying.
like that conversation was
come and
violent
get us. No, they're being chased, and they're just trying to survive.
It sounds like she's bum dialed 911.
Strange thing to
Happens all the time,
but
right?
it's this hectic sort of thing, and everybody's coming and everyone doing ankles. Anyway, Casey crashes the car. He goes up sort of, I don't know if it's up or down embankment, actually.
Not again. Didn't he do
Another
that
one.
last time?
I'm thinking the other ones, I think it went down this time.
Tell the mother I love her.
You should not be allowed in the front of a car. He's terrible.
I know, right? Anyway, so he crashes the car, and without incident, he gives up and they take him out. He doesn't resist arrest or anything else. He's just worried about her. But what happens is, in those final moments, Vicky shoots herself.
And Jesus.
He is out, and in all the footage, again, from all the thing, he's saying, "Is my wife okay? Can you check on my wife? I just want to know if my wife's okay." And they're just trying to deal with him saying, "Casey, let's just get you over here." And you can see all of the people running to her, and they're trying to get her out of the car and find out what's happening with her and what's happened.
So just to be clear, he's exited the vehicle and then they heard the gunshot?
No.
So he could have shot her?
It had already happened. So at that point, you don't know. Correct. He's saying, "It wasn't me. I didn't do it. She shot herself." So
it could be a Romeo and Juliet pact like we spoke about at the start, but he didn't follow through on his bit.
But I think she is actually, from what I've seen, it looked like she was it was not easy to get her out. Like she didn't get out. Like he was taken out and he's removed from the situation, taken away. And then it's just people sort of hovering around while they're filming a little bit, is showing them working on her or trying to help her. I couldn't really tell, but that she's the focus of their attention.
Is she dead at this point or still alive?
Not at that point. I don't think she is. She is declared dead in the hospital shortly thereafter. When they get her to hospital, she's pronounced dead a couple of hours later, actually. However, her death has been ruled a suicide, and when they investigated, it was based on the angle of which obviously the gun had got her, but it was kind of from the back of her own head, but apparently it wasn't him, it was her. And so that seems like a bit of an underwhelming ending, the way I've sort of presented that, but that's kind of where their story ends in some respects. So Casey's taken. So. Casey is obviously taken back to prison, not to the same one. They take him to another facility, and poor Vicky and her family and her friends are left with this sort of, what the hell happened there? We didn't know. She lied to us all. We feel betrayed. She did this. We could have all been at risk, really, with the things that went on at different times with such a dangerous man. Yes. I think her friends think that she was just totally in love with him. I do think they think he manipulated her, definitely. But they think that one of them kept saying that, at one point she'd been quoted as saying, "I'm going to go out with a bang." The fact that he then called her his wife, maybe it was a nice touch. I don't know. They were not married. Nothing that they were able to say that they hadn't been anywhere. There'd been no officiation of that. It was just what he was saying. And hell, they already had the same surnames, didn't they? That was quite convenient. But the Vanderburgh County coroner, which I presume must be the one in Indiana, ruled Vicky White's death to have been the result of a suicide. Her body was returned to Alabama, and about 200 people attended her funeral. Casey White was returned to Alabama after waiving his right to an extradition hearing. He was transferred back to the state prison in Bessemer, Alabama, rather than the facility from which he escaped. And what is quite interesting, his motion for a preliminary hearing on the escape charge was denied, with the judge referring the case to a grand jury. On July 11, Casey White was charged with felony murder for the death of Vicky White. In May 2023, Casey White reached a plea deal in which he pleaded guilty to first-degree prison escape and in exchange would not be tried for felony murder in the death of Vicky White. So because he admitted that he had escaped the prison, that's what he was tried on, not the fact that she then killed herself.
That's weird.
But how can you get charged with murder
when if you've already
someone else kills themselves?
Yeah, and it's already been ruled as, I don't know. Crazy.
Negotiator, we'll charge you with something completely ridiculous unless you plead guilty to escaping from prison.
If there's one sort of footnote, which I do think is quite interesting, it's this idea of, do people really think that there was true love? And if it was, do they see the actions of Vicky differently? I think, of course, they do. Was she just a desperate middle-aged woman who would have done anything? I don't know that she was, given her track record. I think she genuinely thought, fuck it, I'm just going to give a shot. Yeah, I think so. What have I got to lose anyway? I think maybe it was coming with the retirement. I don't know that she had an awful lot else going on. So I don't know. She just lost her mind and just let love rule.
Do you think if she...
Jeepers. I hadn't seen those before.
Didn't expect that.
Neither was I.
I was just going to say, do you think that if she ever saw her lover's bitch tits, she may not have made the choices that she made?
Well, I'm wondering why he's the only one who...
I am referring to a picture of Casey White with his shirt off, where he has a
chick magnet.
Pronounced pair of breasticles. Moobs, yes. So anyway, sorry, I'll stop sharing.
Doesn't look like he's doing much stuff in terms of
not doing the weights.
Care.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't look like he's doing the weights room.
It looks like he actually may have been quite heavy and he's lost some weight, and so he's got those real...
There's a lot of real estate between his nipples and his shoulders. He's tall, yes. Yeah,
and everything's just hanging. It's gravity. His boobs have been pulled down lower because of gravity, because he's so tall.
But there is a thing, I think, with people who are that big, generally, like height-wise, that their bodies have to work a lot harder and to do just things that we do and take for granted. Like, I mean, it's a whole different...
got a lot of blood
work to be done.
Blood through.
Mm.
Yeah. So what I was sort of alluding to, though, with this idea of crazy love, can you believe, like, in the weeks after the capture, the specific motel room that they'd stayed in Evansville became a bit of a, like, highly sought-after tourist attraction. Yeah, and people had more than 60 bookings. And it's just like people...
This is macabre.
It is, but that's more to do with people championing love, I guess.
You think?
I think so. I do, actually.
Schoolish myself, but all right.
I don't say I think it's a good thing. It's not like I'd be remotely interested in it, but I don't think they're doing it because they think he had been, a murderer. I think they were doing it because they thought these pair were, star-crossed lovers or whatever it is.
Mm.
So that is the story of Casey Cole White and Vicky White, and the Love on the Run is the name of
Love on the Run.
Love on the Run, Jailbreak, Love on the Run is the name of the Netflix documentary that I watched. And it's funny, I watched it once and then I watched part of it again in like preparation, and there's some really interesting characters in there. Like, I mean, to be honest, the jailbreak and the manhunt was actually the least interesting part of this story, that part of the crime. It was more... for me, and what I really like when we do sometimes, I don't think I've done one personally for some time, is trying to get a view on somebody.
People.
Yeah, and that's what I really enjoyed about this. The people that were involved, the people around them, and there was so much footage and so many recordings that I was sitting there going, oh my God, I don't feel like I should be listening to this. Like a lot of it was really a little bit, I was like, oh my God, Vicky, you're loving this. And I'd be like, Casey, don't you say that. You know what I mean? That poor woman, she had no chance. So I don't know. She said that she was going to go out with a bang to some of her friends, and maybe she just, with Thelma Louise style, knew that it was never going to be a happy ending, but she just thought, fuck it. I don't know. Well, over to you guys. What do you think?
I'd imagine that given that she did have 20-something years in law enforcement and correctional facilities, she would have had a pretty bad run if she ended up going to jail. So I can see why that wouldn't have been an option for her to be arrested.
What, because she'd been part of the police?
She'd been police, that's right.
Police. She'd been a police.
She'd been a police. And it's not a pleasant ride if you then end up on the other side of the bars. And also just the life that she would know would be in jail, that, that's not worth really. So maybe it was a case of, I'm going to have this
one crack at something, it's a bit crazy. And if it doesn't turn out, I mean, when you said that they had the whole conversation about buying weapons, that was a massive red flag for me. I know Americans like their guns, and it's probably
but still
not as big a deal, but it's like you're with a man who's been accused of murder or, you know, attempted murder. He's considered so dangerous. Yes, I know you're all madly in love with him, but you're facilitating possible more violent crime with him by having guns. You know, you're just making it easier.
Yes. Yeah. And that was what the local law enforcement, when they were talking in the press, they were like, our issue is that she has allowed a dangerous criminal onto the streets. Yeah. So whether or not
and given him guns,
they've got their own issues, correct. She has totally facilitated this. She has put someone out there who is a huge risk to society at large. That's unforgivable. We can't. We just got to find them now.
To her, it's like, I can't help who I love, right? And it's just a bit of a shame that he shot someone else X years ago. And probably that's a part of her going, oh, he's changed. He probably wouldn't do that again. But, and even in the way he's been, you know, as you said, he just sort of gave up straight away. It's not like he pulled a gun or did anything.
No, he didn't do any of that.
It was just like.
And in all the footage, like he asked several times, my wife, where's my wife? Where's my
Call Mom, tell her I love her. You know,
Casey, no one's going to die here tonight.
See, even the original...
Put your guns down.
Even the original spree, yes, he shot the girlfriend. That's bad. And he shot the dog real bad, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe the dog was an asshole. We don't know the backstory of the dog. Right? It could have been the real little shit. Don't know. Anyway, but that's bad. That's all bad, right? But then he steals people's cars from them and, you know, does it in a scary way. Shooting out the back window was very dangerous and reckless because he could have killed any one of those two people. But he didn't, like the guy gave the guy his phone back. You know, like he wasn't murdering every person whose car he took.
No.
And there are cases with people who do that, right?
What a lovely bloke.
I'm not saying he's a lovely bloke. I'm wondering whether 75 years was really appropriate for what he did, comparative to
I can't
people
come at 75.
will brutally rip 16 people and get 15 minutes. You know, like
I'm
so.
with you on that.
Totally.
So I think there's a bit of an overreach on how dangerous he really was. He sounds to me like a bit of a dopey geezer, frankly. And back to your point.
I mean, ask his girlfriend. She'd probably have some other things to say about that.
No, I just mean he doesn't sound like the great manipulative Svengali that some might make him out to be. In terms of he manipulated her. I mean, I think, obviously, while you're talking, I've seen images of her, and I think to your point, when we are women of a certain age, we do become invisible to men. And yes, you would get used to in that environment, you know, the sweet charm and whatever. And if you just have a chemical reaction to one and they get under your crack, they get I meant under your skin. Under your skin, or it's a crack in your defences, and they get into that.
A chink in your armour.
Yes, don't be so racist. If you know, any one of those things, right? So I can see how you could succumb to the charm of a person in that sort of circumstance. And I'm not saying she was a lonely middle-aged woman, but I can see that she could have been. And I could see that if everything was about the job and she was coming to retirement, then the job doesn't exist anymore. So tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if it was a retirement. There's like a set age that you have to retire, or she chose to retire. I don't know about that. Because what did you say? She was
56. I wouldn't have thought. I don't know about that. Seems quite
young.
Yeah.
But it's also like, to your point, it's like saying, okay, I could do this job forever, or I could have a crack at this insane love thing. And if it doesn't work out, I'll end it all because I'm not going to jail.
I'm just disappointed that after all of that 12 months of planning and getting a new phone and buying one bit of...
I thought 11 days was all right.
No.
I'd be over it by then anyway.
If I spent a year planning something and it only lasted 11 days, like, fuck.
I'd be like, you're on the clock, mate, let's go.
And she had insider information. Like, far out. I thought she was going to have a really good plan and it was going to go, well, I'll have as much rompy-pompy as I can get for a little while and then...
That's what I'm saying. I reckon he would have been getting a tap on the shoulder. No sleep for you again.
I do think she needs to know her getaway drivers better before she puts them in charge of the getaway drive. Because
yes, he doesn't sound like he's that
that's good. 2 for 1. Come on, Lurch. I know it must be hard because he's have his head out the sunroof and getting the mosquitoes in his face or the insects in his face.
She would have had to get a decent-sized vehicle for him to accommodate him. Otherwise, he'd look like, Mr. Bean or something in the little car.
Exactly. Be like that. Or he's got the seat back as far as he can so that he can fit into it, I don't know. I think it was not a very good plan. For all of that time she had, excellent job getting out. I think she really nailed that bit. That was her expertise.
Yes.
I don't think she was so good on the investigation. And 11 days, she can't have been happy at herself.
See, I think that's quite a lot because I imagine, I don't know, I do think it's quite a lot in the sense that it'd be so intense and you would be so waiting for it to, blow up.
I don't think I could last 11 days. Don't get me wrong, but I just think that if you're planning for that long and you're doing all those things that she did and you've got some level of knowledge about it.
She wasn't as good as
she. It's only 11 days.
She could have been better at it, yeah. It's interesting because his height doesn't really come into any of the documentary or the documents that I've read about them being found. It was actually her, ironically. Do you know what I mean? I would have thought someone would have got out a sore thumb. There
obvious.
What's that other hideous saying? It stands out like balls on a
dog's balls.
Dog's balls on a cat.
Dog's balls, is that it?
I don't know about the on the cat. I've always just said sticks out like dog's balls because they stick out anyway.
It is a Romeo and Juliet kind of tale, isn't it? Of forbidden love and
It's sad.
If you get a chance, do listen to some of the phone calls because some of them are. He's not saying to her she's someone that she's not, and she's not pretending to be someone that she's not to him either. Do you know what I mean? When they're having the conversations, it's this very sort of
down to earth almost.
Yeah, or don't be like that, or I wouldn't entertain that, or I wouldn't do that, or that's not really who I am, or she's not trying to be somebody else. I mean, he's saying that he loves her and she's beautiful and whatever else, but he's not be going out of the ballpark where you'd go, or you're totally just bullshitting. There was some. I thought I could detect some genuine feeling. And there seemed to be some authenticity to it.
Could well have.
Yeah, I don't doubt that bit.
I don't know. I think that's what I took from it, and that's why it has sat with me for a couple of days. And I thought, oh, do you know what? I kind of get the fact that I think Vicky just thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot.
I'm going to have a go at this, and if it doesn't work out,
then I know what's coming my way. There's one thing that is really important. Actually, it's not that important. It's just really interesting. And there's one conversation that they're having. And he says, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm watching, and I've forgotten the name of the bloody show. It's called like Ex-Cons or Ex-Crims or whatever else. And it's about people having relationships with them. And he says, oh, don't watch that. And don't watch that. And either he says or she says they never work out. And then she says they never work out. Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, they're having a conversation about it. She's watching TV programs about the fact that, don't. There's never a happy ending.
I don't suppose that it's a possibility that she had some kind of illness that was undisclosed.
Well, they did ask that because at one point when she was saying that she was leaving work and that she was going to go to the bang or whatever else, one of her friends, and it's in the footage, says, "You're not sick, are you, Vic?" And she's like, "Nah." So there's nothing to suggest there was, but it was asked of her because actually I wondered if that's where we were headed at one point where she was like, I've
got cancer or something.
Yeah.
And I must
that really would make sense, right?
Selma and Louise thing, why not? I kick my heels up one last time or something.
Yeah. I found somewhere in something a little bit obscure him talking about her in court after, whenever he must have gone to court for this. Anyway, he was still saying how incredible she was at her job. He was still talking about her, which doesn't really say anything, but he was still saying that no one had ever treated him the way she did. She was the only person who ever showed him any compassion or affection. All of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
You got to wonder if there was something else going on with her that only she knew about.
Yeah.
I think that, this is one of those that I'm quite happy to pass on any kind of sentencing for because at the end of the day, it's all worked out pretty shitty for the people involved anyway.
Yeah.
It's just
thankfully no one else really got sort of entangled in it, which is, probably more good luck than anything, but no one else lost their life or was affected.
They didn't take anyone else down with them.
No.
I would like him to do high-speed driving.
Oh, he's got to do
what's it called? Defensive drive. Defensive drive.
Yeah, but at high speed.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Although we might be facilitating for him to get away more effectively next time, but, you know.
Well, I don't want it to be taxpayer funded, but I do want him to have to do that.
Well, he's crashing cars right, left and centre. All right, well, I think that's fair. Okay. All right, anything other thoughts?
No. Nope, I reckon that's it.
All right, well, thank you, Swanny.
Nice one, though.
Interesting story. Nice allusion to love.
I quite enjoyed it, yeah.
And as we say every week, miss you already. Ciao.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com/trialbywine or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.